Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the podcast with Psychoanalytical Psychotherapist and Relationships Specialist Mr. Ayala and Dr. Vilk, LMHC Psychoanalyst and Relationship Specialist. Today, we're going to be working on how to identify toxic relationships to help you identify destructive patterns in your guys' relationship. So one of the main things you'll feel when you're in a toxic relationship is being isolated from your family and your friends and social groups and circles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had a lot of clients report to me that they just end up completely isolated. This isn't to say that that's how they always were. You'll see, many times women who, were these outgoing people. But the way this isolation starts is it's manifested in this, jealousy of a boyfriend or partner, false accusations, anger at time spent away, and a person in a situation like this may be made to feel very guilty just for taking time away from their partner. And over time, this just sort of starts to erode a person's confidence, and they do change personality-wise to become meeker, and they end up pulling away from friends and family because they're trying to avoid having this negative interaction with their partner.
Yeah, and you start to lose yourself. I mean, they may make you quit a job, or you feel like you have to quit a job. They might not even directly tell you, but you know what they're saying. You might stop hanging out with friends or coworkers. They may move you out of, a close area where you're with familiar people, friends, family, anything like that.
Well, I think the other component to a toxic relationship is you can really lose a part of yourself because you become trying to help your partner's needs get met. And this can happen if your emotions or thoughts or feelings are really dismissed by your partner. For instance, if you go to and try to tell your partner, I felt really frustrated when you walked away from me the other day. If your partner says, you shouldn't feel that way, that's stupid, that's the wrong feeling, or you're just crazy, this can really change a person's view of themselves. They can feel off kilter. They can feel as though they don't have a right to have these feeling states, or they just don't trust themselves overall. So it really, really can diminish your own sense of self. But I think it's good to mention, on the flip side, if you're a person, if this sounds familiar, that you may have said to your partner, you shouldn't feel angry. If you're getting defensive, just remember, a person bringing you a feeling state like that is trying to educate you about the consequences of your behavior. It's not meant to be an attack on you, even if it's difficult to hear. So if you can constructively say, it wasn't my intention to hurt you, but thank you for telling me, you can move the conversation into a more productive one.
Yeah, because one of the big things, if you're telling someone that what they're feeling or saying to you is stupid, or someone's telling you that, the person that's being attacked will just start hiding parts of themselves completely, which really diminishes a lot of the goodness and the richness of a relationship. Because then you start being with a dull person, or you start becoming dull yourself because you're worried, like, oh, if I say anything about anything, any feeling, it's going to start a fight, so I'm not going to even say anything. And you really just cut yourself out.
Mm-hmm. Right, or you start thinking, maybe I am crazy. I mean, you really start taking on these ideas that are wrong about yourself that this person has been telling you, which I think can also lead into hiding aspects of yourself for the sake of the relationship, where you stop asking about things that you want or need. You stop talking about things that make you angry because there's this fear that these things are going to be thrown in your face, and it's really not going to end well.
Yeah, and the worst thing is that you start believing them as true, and you start forgetting who you actually are. It's not even hiding anymore. It's an actual forgetting.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of people I've worked with, there's this sense of they're this shell of a person, and they are trying to get back and remember who they used to be before this relationship, and it's a really difficult journey.
Yeah, and that's one of the easiest way to see that you've fallen into this. Because when you're in it, you kind of might not even notice. You might think this is kind of how it is, or, oh, I'm just changing or growing up or maturing, and it's really not that. If you ever find yourself looking back at the beginning of your relationship and being like, oh, wow, I was outgoing then, or I was really happy then, but now I'm not, that's a big red flag.
Right. I mean, when you love someone and you are in a healthy relationship, you both want to make each other happy, and that involves compromise and communicating different feelings in a constructive way. But ultimately, you want the two of you to be happy and you want to be your best self. And if that's not who you are, that's really indicative of a possible bigger problem in the relationship.
Yeah, and another way this will come out is if you guys start avoiding each other. If you're just avoiding each other and not spending time together because of all the things we were talking about, you can see, oh man, this is another red flag. And you have to start asking yourself some questions like, what's going on? Why are we avoiding each other? Why is he in the room doing this and I'm in this other room doing something else? And we're maybe not even sleeping in the same bed anymore, or being really reluctant to sleep in the same bed, or even feeling disgusted being near them.
Right, I think that's a great point, that if you're physically separated that much, and yes, there, some separation is healthy, but if you're physically separated that much, and if you find yourself not wanting to spend time with that person, that's something else you should really pay attention to. It may not necessarily be something hugely toxic, but it's usually a warning sign.
And another warning sign is when the drama never stops. There's always a problem and there's always something that's gone wrong. And you have a few pretty sweet moments in a relationship. There's always something nice. They may say something nice, or what's nice is that you didn't have a fight today, which isn't all that great, but it feels nice. And you're kind of hanging on to dear life through those moments that you find very sweet. But this sort of living in relationship is poisonous to your life and to your sense of self, and it'll rip you right out of love and really drain you.
Lord, I think it can be absolutely exhausting if you have a partner who is always finger pointing, who paints their experience as always being the victim and things are being done to hurt them, and then blames you and says it's all your fault. Whereas in a healthy relationship and a healthy communication style, each person is responsible for their behavior and for taking accountability of their actions. It takes two people to be in a relationship, and so both people have to work on that and know when it's time to take accountability.
Yeah, and usually when one person is saying it's your fault, it's usually their fault. I mean, you can really look at that. When it's way too many times that it's 100% your fault, there's a lack of sharing and blame, like you're saying, and that's something you guys really have to talk about or deal with. You can't talk about it or deal with it between you guys. It'd be really good to find a mediator, which could be, a pastor, a trusted parent, or a therapist, anyone, because sometimes it's really hard to get out of that repetition with them, that pattern with them, because you're in it, and it's almost impossible to break.
Right, and I think this doesn't mean that the relationship is doomed to fail if this happens, but it does display a lack of emotional maturity on the person's part who can't say, I shouldn't have said this, I'm sorry, let's work to move forward from here.
Yeah, and then since you're feeling so drained, it's usually very helpful to have someone come in and help you anyway.
I think a consequence of being blamed for things all the time is also that a person can be made to feel bad or extremely unlovable. And if you're in a toxic relationship, one of the goals is to keep you around in that relationship at whatever cost. And so your partner may end up trying to manipulate you by saying, well, you're unlovable, and if you leave me, no one's going to want you. And so you may become too afraid to leave because having a bad relationship is better than feeling like you're not going to have any relationship at all. But it's okay to leave if you're in a relationship that is making you feel beat down, unlovable, and if your needs and wants are not being met. It is absolutely okay and even recommended to walk away from that.
Yeah, and this is a severe manipulation and kind of their prime manipulation of someone who creates a toxic relationship, who's there as the attacker on the offense. A lot of us have these messages within us, knowingly or unknowingly, that we feel really unlovable. And that can show up in a lot of places in our life. And if someone latches onto that, they can really abuse us in that way and saying, oh yeah, you have some kind of idea that you're unlovable, you may doubt a little bit of this and that. And let me make sure you really doubt that, so you never leave me. And they will keep you there. And it doesn't matter how unreliable they are. They know they'll keep you there. They'll treat you like crap. They'll never do what they say they will do. But they have guaranteed that you'll stay there because you feel so unlovable. And they tell you that, and then you start to believe that you actually are unlovable. which is not true.
Absolutely. And I mean, can be similar to addiction, where you're chasing that high of how the relationship maybe was in the beginning. Relationships can change over time, sometimes for the better, but sometimes for the worst. And what happens is we keep chasing the white dragon, as they call it, is we're looking to be back at that better time where our partner was nicer to us. But I mean, you can't go back. It's an impossible thing to actually get in a relationship that ends up taking a turn for the worst.
Yeah, and you don't seem to realize that you're actually settling for this relationship and not going after a relationship that you actually need and want and deserve in a way. You know, part of this believing that you're unlovable and your lover attacking you in that way, manipulating that around within you, is that you'll look back at the beginning of a relationship and be like, oh, wow, it was so great and they were so nice and they didn't get angry in the beginnings, and you start attacking yourself and self-blaming and saying, oh, it must be me. I did this. I'm the reason. It's just because, I nagged too much or I asked too much, So you start getting into this really bad pattern where this is where the belief of being unlovable comes into play, and you start acting on that belief, and you'll just settle and just kind of die off. You lose your sense of self. You have no more. Your ambitions die off, and you just do what they say.
Right. And I mean, if someone's attacking you, that's never a good sign of a healthy relationship. I think sometimes people don't realize that it's really all in the delivery of how you say something. If you're name calling and talking about your anger in this way to your partner and then blaming them and not listening, that's much different than saying, I felt really angry and hurt when you took this action.
Yeah, this all falls around really bad communication. Mm-hmm. And when you've tried everything and you're the only one that's really working on the relationship, it could be a good time to think about leaving the relationship, because without the cooperation of both people in the relationship, there is no relationship. And with the lack of cooperation, the relationship dies.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's difficult to create changes in a dynamic if only one person is working at it. Both people have to be willing to work together to change their patterns and their communication styles to get out of that repetition and start a healthier one.
Yeah, and this is when it's a good time to have a lot of other people to talk to. You get your old support. So everything that they did, you start to undo. If they took you away from your friends, you get back to your friend circle. So if they took you away from hobbies, you get back to the hobbies. And another thing that would be good to do is to find a good therapist or psychotherapist or analyst or a good professional support who will help you understand how you got in this relationship, how you function in a relationship, to make sure you don't ever repeat that relationship and you don't just end up finding, the same person with a different face, because we are brilliant in finding that bad person again, over and over again.
Right, and the path to rebuilding after you get ready to leave a relationship like this, I think you're absolutely right. You want to reach out to your support systems, but I also think it would be great to talk to someone professionally, because we all have the tendency to repeat types of relationships, and so there might be some unconscious pull towards someone who is more on the abusive side. So it would be great to try to understand yourself better and to work on seeing some of these signs earlier to protect yourself, from people who will end up leading you into another toxic relationship.
Well, hey, thank you everybody for joining Dr. Vilk and I as we started to explore how to identify if you're in a toxic relationship and what to do if you're finding that you're in one. Join us next week here when we hit up another topic that'll help with understanding yourself and your relationships. So if you can, follow us here on iTunes and YouTube, where you can get notifications of our weekly podcast, and throw us a share if you like what you heard. We'll catch you next time.